Welcome back to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and today we're diving into how to speak English, fluently and confidently.
I'm Sarah.
It's great to have you here, Sarah. You're a real pro when it comes to learning languages.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
So for everyone listening, you've decided to boost your English skills. That's awesome. And we're not just talking about textbook stuff, We're talking about speaking smoothly and naturally, like a pro.
Yeah, exactly.
I think one of the biggest things holding people back is, the fear of making mistakes. It could be scary to speak up when you're not totally sure you're getting it right.
Right.
But here's the thing. Even native English speakers, we mess up sometimes. We trip over words, mix up tenses, it happens. What matters most is getting your ideas across.
Totally. And you know what? Research actually shows we learn better when we're not afraid to slip up. Think about how kids learn language. They just dive in, trying out sounds and phrases. It's that fearlessness we want to recapture.
That's such a good point. It's about shifting our focus from being perfect to just communicating, right?
Yeah, focusing on connection.
Okay, so speaking of shifting gears, have you ever heard of this idea of thinking in English?
Absolutely. It's a total game changer for fluency. Instead of translating in your head, you start forming thoughts directly in English. It's like rewiring your brain for smoother, more spontaneous communication.
It sounds almost magical, but how do we actually do that? Like, how do we put it into practice?
Well, there are some really simple things you can try. Start by narrating your day in English, just in your mind. I'm brushing my teeth, I'm making coffee, I'm walking the dog, just creating a running commentary in English.
So instead of just going through the motions, I'm actively thinking about those actions in English.
Exactly. You can also try commenting on your thoughts and feelings in English. This song is beautiful. I'm feeling stressed today.
Interesting. So basically, I'm becoming my own English-speaking narrator.
Precisely. Another helpful thing is to describe objects you see around you. That's a red apple. This chair is comfy.
I can see how all these small things could add up.
They really do. You're creating this constant flow of English in your mind.
Now let's talk about how we sound when we speak English. Pronunciation's important, right? But I've got to say, I love accents. They add so much character to someone's voice.
Me too. Your accent is part of you. It's something to celebrate, not erase.
But are there certain sounds that are really tough for English learners?
Yeah, for sure. It depends on your native language. For example, Spanish speakers often find the th sound tricky, while Japanese speakers might struggle with the L and R sounds.
It's fascinating how our native language influences how we hear and make sounds in another language. So it's not just about learning the sounds themselves, it's like retraining the muscles in our mouths to make them.
Exactly. It's physical as much as mental.
All right, so as we're retraining those muscles and starting to think in English, how do we actually build our vocabulary and, speak in full sentences?
One really good strategy is learning phrases, not just single words. Instead of just memorizing beautiful, you might learn, that's a beautiful sunset, or you have a beautiful smile.
So it's like learning those ready-to-go chunks of language I can use in different situations.
Right. It makes your learning more efficient and helps you sound more natural.
I'm already feeling more confident. So to really sound like native speakers, what about idioms? Those quirky expressions that make the language come alive.
Idioms are awesome. They can be tricky at first, but they make you sound like you've really got a handle on English.
Yeah, like break a leg, which of course doesn't mean to actually break your leg, it means good luck. Or piece of cake, which doesn't involve any cake, but means something is easy.
Great examples. Idioms add humor and color to your English, but it's key to learn them in context and use them the right way.
So where do we find these idioms? I'm guessing movies, TV shows, music are all good places to start.
They are. Immersing yourself in real English content is one of the best ways to learn idioms naturally. Don't be afraid to write them down and try using them in your conversations.
Love it. It's like turning entertainment into a learning opportunity. What about podcasts, especially those made for English learners?
Podcasts are such a great resource. They cover tons of topics and styles, and many are designed specifically to help learners.
I like podcasts that have transcripts so I can read along as I listen and catch any words I miss.
That's a great tip. And some podcasts have exercises or quizzes to test your understanding, which can be really helpful.
Okay, we've got movies, TV shows, podcasts, so many great resources. But what about the ultimate immersion experience? Moving to an English-speaking country.
Living in an English-speaking environment can really speed up your learning. You're constantly surrounded by the language, forced to use it every day. You pick up nuances you might not get in a classroom.
It's like a 2047 language program, but it's also a big decision, not something everyone can do.
Totally. So what if you can't just pack up and move? Are there ways to create immersion while you're traveling?
That's a great question. What do you suggest?
You can totally create an immersive environment right where you are. It's about finding ways to engage with English in your daily life.
Like what specifically?
For example, you could find an English-speaking job or volunteer somewhere where English is the main language.
That's a great way to use your skills and get experience at the same time.
Exactly. Another idea is hosting travelers in your home through websites like Couchsurfing or Airbnb.
That's a fun way to meet people from all over and practice in a casual setting.
And it can be a great cultural exchange.
Of course, we can't forget about technology. There are tons of apps, websites, even just switching your phone settings to English can help.
Tech is definitely a helpful tool. You have dictionaries, translation apps, online platforms, but it's important to find a balance between online learning and real-life interaction.
I agree. While apps are great for vocab and grammar, it's crucial to practice speaking with actual people.
Exactly.
Speaking of practicing, here's a cool tip. It might sound a little strange, but trust me, use a mirror to practice speaking out loud.
A mirror. Tell me more.
I know it might feel silly, but it's actually really effective. You can see your own facial expressions, body language, even your mouth movements, which helps you see where you need to improve.
I see, like having your own personal coach.
Exactly. Plus, you can practice different situations. Giving a presentation, ordering food, having a conversation.
That's a safe space to experiment.
Right. So as we finish up this first part of our deep dive, I want to stress something super important for success in language learning: consistent effort and patience.
Couldn't agree more. It's not about overnight transformations. It's about making steady progress over time.
And celebrating those little victories along the way, right?
Absolutely. Each new word, each conversation, each time you understand a native speaker, those are all wins.
Exactly. It's all about those small wins adding up to big fluency gains.
And remember, setbacks happen. It's okay to have days where you feel stuck. Just get back on track and keep going.
Persistence is key. Ready for the next round of tips?
Absolutely. I'm excited to share more strategies.
So we've covered a lot, from thinking in English to, creating that immersive environment. Now let's get into some specific techniques to really level up those speaking skills.
I like that. Having a toolbox of techniques can be so helpful.
For sure. Let's start with something called shadowing. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh, yeah. Shadowing is a great way to improve pronunciation, intonation, even your rhythm.
Sounds kind of mysterious. What is it exactly?
Basically, you're mimicking a native speaker, almost like you're their shadow. You listen to a recording and try to repeat exactly what they're saying, matching their pace and intonation.
So it's like synchronized speaking.
Exactly. It might feel a little awkward at first, but it's amazing for internalizing the sounds and rhythms of natural English.
Makes sense. So I'm not just listening, I'm actively engaging with the language, trying to reproduce it.
Yes, and that active engagement is key. It helps you develop muscle memory, for those sounds and intonation patterns.
So how do I actually do it? Just pick any recording and start repeating?
Well, it's best to start with something short and clear at a pace you can comfortably follow. A podcast, a news report, even a scene from a movie.
Got it. Something manageable.
Right. Repetition is key. Listen, pause, and then try to repeat exactly what you heard. Focus on the sounds, the intonation, even the pauses.
Breaking it down and really focusing on those details.
Yes. As you get more comfortable, you can try longer recordings, more complex ones. Even try shadowing different accents to hear the variety in English pronunciation.
Cool idea. So shadowing is for pronunciation and fluency. What about self-recording? That sounds a bit like talking to myself.
It is a bit like that, but self-recording lets you go back and really listen to yourself, which can be super insightful.
That makes sense. It's hard to judge yourself while you're actually speaking. With self-recording, I can hear how I sound to someone else.
Exactly. You could pick a topic you're interested in, maybe something you've been learning about, and just record yourself talking about it for a few minutes.
Then listen back and analyze it.
Yes. Pay attention to your pronunciation, grammar, how smoothly you speak, your overall clarity. Listen for any mistakes you keep making, any spots where you get stuck.
It's like being my own language coach.
Right. You can also use it to track your progress. It's motivating to see how much you've improved.
I love that. So we talked a bit about practicing with other English learners, but I think it deserves more attention.
Totally. It's so valuable. It creates this safe, supportive space where everyone's in the same boat.
It definitely feels less pressure than talking to a native speaker, especially when you're just starting out.
Absolutely. And you learn so much from each other, sharing tips, strategies, resources. You can even do role-playing together.
And you don't feel as bad about making mistakes because everyone's doing it.
Exactly. Plus, it's fun to connect with others going through the same thing.
So how do you find people to practice with? Are there online communities or groups?
Oh, tons. You could join a language exchange group online or in person. That way you can connect with people learning English who are also native speakers of your language.
Language exchange groups are great. You help each other, it's a win-win.
There are also English conversation clubs at libraries, community centers, sometimes even universities. Often, they're free, and they have a structure for practicing.
Great ideas. And then there are online forums and communities specifically for language learning.
Exactly. You'll find people at your level who want to practice. The key is to be proactive, put yourself out there.
Now let's talk about something that could be a game changer. Your mindset. How you think and feel about language learning can really impact your progress.
Oh, 100%. Mindset is huge. If you believe you can learn English, you're way more likely to succeed.
It's like that saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Exactly. It's not just about believing you can do it. It's about embracing the whole process, the challenges too.
Because learning a language isn't always easy. There will be times when you feel frustrated, maybe you want to give up.
That's normal. Everyone feels that way sometimes. The key is not letting those feelings stop you.
So how do we create a more positive mindset? What are some practical tips?
We'll start by setting realistic goals. Don't try to do too much too soon. Start small, then gradually make things harder as you progress.
I like that. Baby steps.
Another important one is focusing on your progress, not your mistakes.
It's easy to get hung up on those mistakes and feel discouraged.
It is, but remember, mistakes are normal. They're actually how we learn and grow.
So instead of beating myself up, I should see them as feedback, showing me where to improve.
Exactly, and don't forget to celebrate your wins, no matter how small they seem.
Yes, those little wins add up and keep you going. What are some other ways to stay positive and motivated on this journey?
Surrounding yourself with positive people can make a huge difference. Connect with other learners, share experiences, encouragement.
Having a support system is so important. What about finding resources that inspire you? Like a favorite podcast, a YouTube channel, maybe a book about language learning.
That's a great idea. Those resources can give you a boost, especially when you're feeling stuck.
And they often offer practical tips.
Exactly. It's about finding what works for you and creating a learning environment that feels good and motivating.
Before we move on, I want to talk about self-compassion.
Self-compassion, so vital. It's being kind to yourself, especially when you mess up or things get tough.
Because let's be real, learning a language can be hard. It's easy to be tough on yourself.
Especially when you compare yourself to others or to, some ideal of a perfect speaker.
So true. But everyone learns at their own pace.
And everyone has strengths and weaknesses. So instead of being hard on yourself, be patient.
Offer yourself the same kindness you offer a friend who is struggling.
Yes. Recognize that you're human, and this takes time, effort, and a lot of self-love.
So we've covered active learning techniques like shadowing and self-recording, the power of practicing with others, and having a positive mindset. Ready for the final stretch?
Bring it on.
Awesome. We've focused on internal strategies, but now I want to talk about external things you can do to create an environment that supports your learning.
Love that. Our environment plays a huge role in our success.
It really does. Okay, let's start simple. Surround yourself with English.
Immersion, immersion, immersion.
Exactly. Now, we talked about living in an English-speaking country, but there are tons of ways to create that immersion right where you are.
Absolutely. Find those opportunities to expose yourself to the language as much as possible.
So what are some practical ways to do that?
One of the simplest is changing the language settings on your devices to English. Your phone, computer, tablet, everything.
That's so smart.
It is. It might feel weird at first, but you adapt quickly. You're constantly seeing English, even if you're just checking email or scrolling through social media.
It's like passive learning in the background. And then there's English music and podcasts.
Music and podcasts are amazing, entertaining, and educational.
And there's something for everyone. Whether you're into pop, classical, true crime, comedy, you'll find something you enjoy in English.
And you can listen while you do other things like commute, workout, even chores.
Multitasking for language learning.
Exactly. And don't forget about movies and TV shows.
The classics. They're great for listening comprehension, and you learn different accents, slang, cultural stuff.
And with all the streaming services, there's so much to choose from.
And subtitles can be really helpful, especially when you're starting out.
Absolutely. As you get better, you can try turning them off or even use English subtitles to reinforce your reading.
Good strategy. Okay, what about reading?
Reading is so important for building vocabulary, understanding grammar, seeing different writing styles.
And it can be really relaxing.
Totally. What are some of your favorite things to read in English?
I love novels and short stories. They're immersive. You get lost in the story.
And there are so many genres to choose from. What about nonfiction?
Nonfiction is great too. You learn about new topics and build vocabulary in specific areas. History, science, business, anything you're interested in.
And English news websites and blogs are great for staying up to date and seeing different writing styles.
And for practicing reading comprehension.
Yes. So we've talked about passive immersion, but what about actually speaking English in your daily life? That's where it all comes together.
Absolutely. It's one thing to understand, but using it in real life is where the magic happens. So how do we create those opportunities?
Well, joining an English conversation group is a great way to start. We talked about them before, but they're worth mentioning again.
For sure. They're relaxed, supportive, and often led by experienced teachers who can give feedback.
Finding a language exchange partner is another good option.
Language partners are great. You help each other practice in a more personalized setting.
And it's fun. You connect with someone from a different culture.
Now let's talk about something that can be intimidating, but also really rewarding. Putting yourself in situations where you have to speak English with native speakers.
That's where the real growth happens.
It's where you test your skills, see how far you've come, and really experience the language in action.
It can be nerve-wracking, but it's also super motivating.
So what are some tips for handling those situations?
Well, remember, everyone makes mistakes. It's part of the process.
Native speakers get that you're learning, and they're usually patient.
Start small. Don't try to have a super complex conversation right away.
Like ordering food, asking for directions, making small talk with a cashier, those everyday interactions.
Exactly. And let people know you're learning.
That's a good point. Most people are happy to help. They might even slow down or use simpler language.
Right. And don't be afraid to ask if you don't understand something.
Way better to ask than to pretend you get it.
Exactly. And remember, making mistakes is okay. Don't let fear stop you from speaking.
The more you speak, the better you get. Okay, let's talk about travel, the ultimate immersion experience.
Travel. There's no better way to immerse yourself in the language and culture.
You're constantly surrounded by English, so many chances to practice.
Any tips for making the most of travel for language learning?
First, choose a place you're genuinely interested in.
Makes sense. If you're excited about the place, you'll be more motivated to talk to people.
And don't be afraid to go beyond the tourist spots.
Love that. Explore those less touristy areas. You might meet locals who don't speak English as well, which can be a good challenge.
And it's a more authentic experience.
Think about doing activities that involve speaking English. A cooking class, a guided tour, maybe even volunteering.
That gives you a structured setting to practice, and you'll be with people who are also interested in learning or sharing their culture.
Exactly. And just chat with people at cafes, restaurants, shops, museums. Ask for recommendations, share stories.
Those casual conversations can be so memorable.
They really can. Before we wrap up this section, let's talk about support.
Support is crucial. Learning a language can be tough. It's so much easier with people who encourage you.
Absolutely. How do you find that support?
Connecting with other learners is huge. We've talked about this, but it's worth repeating.
Definitely. Whether it's an online forum, a conversation club, or even just chatting with other learners, those connections are valuable.
You share experiences, tips, encouragement. You learn from each other's mistakes.
And celebrate each other's wins.
What about finding a mentor or tutor?
Mentors and tutors are amazing. They give you guidance, feedback, encouragement.
And they keep you accountable and motivated. They can offer a different perspective, too.
What about support from family and friends?
They can be the best cheerleaders.
Even if they don't speak English, they can still be supportive, encouraging, and help create a good learning environment at home.
Exactly. They can help you make time for studying, be patient when you're frustrated, and celebrate your successes. Having that support makes a world of difference. So let's talk about common mistakes English learners make and, more importantly, how to avoid them.
I love that idea. Knowing those common pitfalls can help us stay on track.
For sure. So let's start with one I see all the time. Translating word for word from your native language.
The word-for-word trap. So tempting, but it can make your sentences sound really unnatural.
It can. English grammar and sentence structure are different from other languages, so those direct translations don't always work.
And it makes it harder to think in English, which we talked about earlier.
How do we avoid falling into that trap?
Focus on learning phrases and chunks of language, not just individual words.
We talked about that, but it's worth repeating. Seeing language as building blocks, not isolated words.
Yes, when you learn phrases, you're internalizing the grammar too, not just the words.
It's like learning in context, which makes it stick better.
Another tip is to pay attention to how English actually sounds. The patterns, the rhythm.
That natural flow native speakers have.
Right, listen to how they phrase things, where they emphasize words, how they connect ideas.
And don't be afraid to imitate them. Mimicry is a great learning tool.
It is. The more you hear real English, the more you'll internalize those patterns. Okay, another common mistake. Being afraid to speak.
Oh yeah, the fear of speaking. A big roadblock for a lot of learners.
It's understandable. Putting yourself out there can be scary, especially when you're not confident.
But it's like learning to ride a bike. You can't just read about it, you have to actually do it.
Exactly. And the more you speak, the easier it gets.
What are some tips for getting over that fear?
Find a safe, supportive place to practice.
Like a conversation group, or even just a friend or family member who'll listen and encourage you.
Right. Find people who won't judge you and will support you.
And remember, everyone makes mistakes. It's how we learn.
The key is not letting those mistakes stop you. See them as learning opportunities.
Don't be afraid to start small. You don't have to jump into a big, complicated conversation.
Exactly. Start with greetings, introductions, simple, everyday phrases.
And as you get more confident, you can make your conversations longer and more complex. Okay, let's talk about another mistake. Focusing too much on grammar.
The grammar trap. It's easy to get so caught up in the rules that you forget the main goal, which is communication.
So true. Grammar is important, but it shouldn't be the only thing you focus on. How do we find that balance?
Remember that fluency is about communicating effectively, even if your grammar isn't perfect.
So it's okay to make a few mistakes as long as people understand you.
Exactly. Even native speakers make grammar mistakes.
That's true. It's more about the overall flow and clarity.
And don't be afraid to experiment.
I like that. Try out new words, even if you're not totally sure if you're using them right.
The more you experiment, the more you learn. You'll start to get a feel for how the language works.
Now let's talk about using language that's too formal.
Ah, yes, the textbook English problem. It's easy to sound stiff and unnatural, especially if you've learned mainly from textbooks.
Textbooks are good for the basics, but they don't always reflect how people really talk.
So how do we avoid sounding like a textbook?
What are your thoughts?
Listen to how native speakers actually speak. Pay attention to the phrases, the tone, the flow.
Movies, TV shows, podcasts, even listening to conversations at a cafe can help.
Totally. And don't be shy about using those phrases yourself.
Another tip, practice speaking in different contexts.
Great idea. Instead of just formal stuff, try role-playing different situations.
Like ordering coffee, asking for directions, chatting about your weekend.
Those real-life situations help you develop a more natural way of speaking. And don't forget about contractions.
Ah, contractions. Those make English sound so much more natural.
Exactly. I'm going to instead of I am going to. Can't instead of cannot.
Small changes, big difference. Okay, another mistake, not asking for help when you need it.
It's easy to feel stuck or embarrassed about not knowing something.
But everyone needs help sometimes.
Absolutely. Asking for help shows that you're serious about learning and that you're not afraid to ask for guidance.
So if you're struggling with grammar, pronunciation, or just need someone to practice with, don't hesitate to ask.
Talk to a teacher, a tutor, a language exchange partner, even a friend or family member who's good at English.
There are lots of people who are happy to help.
And last but not least, be patient with yourself.
Patience is crucial.
It's a journey, not a race. Fluency takes time and effort.
It's easy to get discouraged when you don't see results right away, but remember, it's a gradual process.
There will be ups and downs, plateaus, times when you feel like you're not making progress.
Just trust the process. Be kind to yourself.
Celebrate those small wins and take breaks when you need them.
Every little bit counts. So we've talked about common mistakes like translating word for word, fear of speaking, focusing too much on grammar, using formal language, not asking for help, and impatience. And we've discussed ways to avoid those pitfalls.
Knowing those common mistakes can really make a difference.
Absolutely. Before we move on, I want to touch on one more thing, making learning fun.
Fun is so important. When we enjoy it, we're more likely to stick with it.
So true. And there are so many ways to make it fun.
What are some of your favorites?
I always try to find resources that match my interests.
I love that. If you like music, listen to English songs.
Right. If you like movies, watch English movies and TV shows. If you like reading, read English books.
It shouldn't feel like work. It should feel like a hobby.
Another tip, set yourself little challenges.
Challenges are fun, like learning 5 new words every day or watching a whole movie without subtitles.
Those challenges keep you motivated and make it more rewarding. And games.
Games are awesome for learning English.
They are. There are so many online, in app stores, even in textbooks.
And they make learning feel like playing.
Exactly. You can practice vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation without feeling like you're studying.
Try using English in creative ways in your daily life.
I love that, like writing your grocery list in English.
Exactly. Or have a little conversation with yourself in the shower in English.
Or narrate your day in your head in English.
Find those little chances to use English every day.
And don't take yourself too serious.
That's so important. Laugh at yourself, make mistakes, just enjoy it.
Learning a language should be joyful.
It should. Embrace the journey, find what you enjoy, and have fun with it.
Ready for the grand finale.
Yes. Bring on the final words of wisdom.
Okay, so we've covered a ton in this deep dive. Practice, immersion, mindset, common mistakes, making it fun. Before we finish, I want to leave you with some key takeaways.
Love those. They help solidify those important lessons.
So let's start with one we've been talking about all along, consistency.
Consistency is key. It's not about studying for hours all at once. It's about making English a regular part of your life.
Exactly. Even a few minutes a day makes a difference.
Find a routine that works for you and stick with it.
Listen to a podcast, read a few pages of a book, chat with a language partner. Those consistent efforts really pay off.
And it's okay to have off days.
Life happens. There will be times when you can't stick to your routine.
Don't beat yourself up. Just get back on track as soon as you can.
Don't lose sight of those goals. Another key takeaway, embracing mistakes.
Mistakes are our friends. They're learning opportunities.
So true. Instead of seeing them as failures, see them as stepping stones.
Every mistake teaches you something new.
And brings you closer to fluency.
So don't be afraid to make mistakes. Learn from them and keep going.
Another important one, finding your voice.
Finding your voice. I love that.
It's about embracing your own personality and style. as an English speaker.
You don't have to sound like a textbook, lose your accent, or be perfect.
Be yourself. Express yourself authentically and confidently.
And find the joy in it.
Let your personality shine through, have fun, be creative.
And one more, celebrate your successes.
Celebrating is so important. It's easy to focus on the challenges and forget how far you've come.
Take time to appreciate your progress, no matter how small.
So every new word, every conversation, every time you understand a movie without subtitles, celebrate.
Pat yourself on the back, treat yourself, share your excitement with someone.
Those celebrations keep you motivated.
They do. Before we wrap up, I have one final thought.
Ooh, a final thought. Love it.
Learning English is more than just a new skill.
It's about opening up new possibilities.
Exactly. Connecting with people, exploring new ideas, expanding your world.
It makes your life richer.
So embrace the journey, be patient, and never stop learning.
Beautiful. Sarah, it's been awesome having you on the show.
Thank you. It's been great sharing these tips.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us. Remember, you've got this. Keep practicing, keep learning, and never give up on your dreams.
And if you like this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to the Learn English Lab for more great tips on mastering English. See you next time.
Until then, happy learning. It's like having a built-in cheerleader, you know? Someone to help you stay motivated and remind you why you started this journey in the first place.
Exactly. And speaking of creating a supportive environment, let's talk about something we've touched on before, immersion. How can our listeners really immerse themselves in English, even if they're not living in an English-speaking country?
Yeah, what are some creative ways to make that happen?
Well, one super simple thing is to change the language settings on all your devices to English. Phone, computer, tablet, the whole shebang.
Ah, that's a sneaky good one. You're constantly exposed to English without even realizing it.
Exactly. You might feel a little lost at first, but you'll be surprised how quickly you adjust. Plus, you're passively absorbing new vocabulary and grammar every time you use your devices.
It's like learning on autopilot. And of course, we can't forget about all the fun stuff, movies, TV shows, music, podcasts.
Oh, absolutely. Not only are they super entertaining, but they're also a goldmine for authentic language input.
There's literally something for everyone, whether you're into action movies, romantic comedies, historical dramas, documentaries, you name it. You'll find something you enjoy in English.
And don't underestimate the power of music. Listening to English songs is such a fun way to pick up new words, work on your pronunciation, and just, vibe with the language.
Plus, you might discover some amazing new artists. Speaking of expanding your horizons, what about reading?
Reading is essential for any language learner. It's like a workout for your vocabulary, grammar, and overall understanding of how the language works.
And just like with movies and music, there's a whole universe of English literature out there to explore.
Totally. Classic novels, contemporary thrillers, biographies, self-help books, anything you can think of, you'll find it in English.
I love getting lost in a good book. And it's even better when it's helping me learn English at the same time.
And don't forget about news websites and blogs.
Ah, yeah. Those are great for staying up to date on current events and for seeing different writing styles.
Plus, I often cover a wide range of topics, so you're bound to find something that interests you.
Okay, let's shift gears for a bit. What about putting yourself in situations where you have to speak English with native speakers? That can be a little scary, but also super exciting.
It's definitely where the rubber meets the road. It's your chance to put everything you've learned into practice and see how far you've come.
It can be nerve-wracking, for sure, but also incredibly rewarding.
So any tips for approaching those situations with confidence?
Well, remember that everyone makes mistakes. Native speakers understand that you're learning, and they're usually super patient and encouraging.
It's true. Most people are happy to help.
Another tip, start small. You don't have to jump into a deep conversation right away.
Exactly. Simple things like ordering food, asking for directions, or making small talk with a cashier are great starting points.
And as you get more comfortable, you can gradually work your way up to more challenging conversations.
And don't be afraid to ask for clarification if you don't understand something. It's way better to ask than to pretend to get it and miss out on important information.
So true. Now, what about travel? For a lot of people, that's the ultimate immersion experience.
Oh, absolutely. Traveling to an English-speaking country is like diving headfirst into the language and culture.
It's a fantastic way to practice your speaking skills, interact with native speakers, and make memories that will last a lifetime.
Any tips for making the most of travel for language learning?
Well, first and foremost, choose a destination that really speaks to you, a place you're genuinely excited to explore.
Makes total sense. That passion will make you even more eager to connect with people and use your English.
And don't be afraid to go beyond those typical tourist hotspots. Venture off the beaten path a bit.
I love that. You're more likely to meet locals who might not be as fluent in English, which can be a great challenge.
And you'll get a more authentic experience of the culture.
For sure. Another tip, plan activities that involve speaking English, like taking a cooking class, joining a guided tour, or even volunteering.
Those kinds of activities provide a structured setting for practicing your speaking skills and connecting with people who share your interests.
Exactly. All right, as we wrap up this episode, I want to leave our listeners with some final thoughts that I think are absolutely key for achieving fluency and confidence in English.
Ooh, I'm all ears.
First things first, remember that learning a language is a journey, not a destination. There will be bumps along the way, challenges, setbacks, but also incredible moments of growth and discovery.
It's all about the process and enjoying the ride.
Exactly. Be patient with yourself, celebrate your progress, and never, ever give up on your dreams.
And remember, making mistakes is not a failure. It's a sign that you're learning and growing.
It's all part of the process. Embrace those mistakes. See them as stepping stones to fluency.
And most importantly, find joy in the journey.
Yes. Find what inspires you, what makes you excited about English, and let that passion fuel your learning.
Beautifully said, Sarah. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today.
The pleasure was all mine, Mike. I've loved sharing these tips with your listeners.
And to all of our amazing listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into how to speak English fluently and confidently. Remember, you've got this. Keep practicing, keep learning, and keep believing in yourself.
And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Learn English Lab for more awesome tips and tricks to help you on your English learning journey.
We'll see you in the next episode. Until then, happy learning.